Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unravel the mysteries lurking in the shadows and explore the stories that send shivers down your spine. From unsolved crimes to paranormal encounters, from eerie legends to the unknown, we're here to take you on a journey into the unexplained. Every story has layers, and every layer brings us closer to the truth, or deeper into the mystery. So grab a seat, turn down the lights, and get ready to dive into the unknown. This is the Deep Dive.
Okay, wow. This one's a doozy. The world's greatest scam. So where do we even begin with this whole crypto craze? NFTs, Web3. It seems like everyone's got an opinion, but is it a revolution, a bubble about to burst, or something in between? I'm ready to dive in if you are.
Let's do it. It's definitely a fascinating and, let's be honest, a very confusing landscape out there.
Hmm.
To really wrap our heads around it all, we kind of have to go back to the beginning, back in 2008 when Bitcoin first emerged.
Right after the whole housing market crash, when people were already feeling pretty disillusioned with the traditional financial systems, it was the perfect breeding ground for something new, something different to come along. So Bitcoin was a direct response to that climate.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that distrust in centralized systems was at an all-time high. And that's where Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever they are or were, stepped in with this idea of a decentralized digital currency, Bitcoin.
Hmm.
Free from government control, accessible to anyone, anywhere with an internet connection. It was pretty radical for its time.
Yeah, I can see how that idea would have been appealing. More control, more transparency, especially during such uncertain times. But how do you actually make a decentralized system work? How do you get everyone on board?
That's where the whole blockchain thing comes into play. Imagine a giant digital ledger, right? And every time someone makes a transaction with Bitcoin, it's recorded on this ledger. But here's the kicker. This ledger isn't kept in one place. It's distributed across a massive network of computers all over the world.
Okay, so it's like a giant shared Google Doc that everyone can see but no one can tamper with.
Exactly. And because it's constantly being updated and verified by all these computers, it becomes virtually impossible to cheat the system or double spend Bitcoin. At least that's the theory.
Okay, so that's Bitcoin. But then things start to get really interesting with Ethereum. Am I right? I was skimming through this document, and it mentions Ethereum being like Bitcoin 2.0.
Yeah, you could say that. See, with Bitcoin, it's mainly just about the currency itself, like digital gold. But Ethereum, well, it took things a step further. It introduced these things called smart contracts, which are basically self-executing contracts written in code.
So it's not just about the money anymore. It's about using that blockchain technology for like anything you can code.
Exactly. And that opened up a whole world of possibilities. Suddenly, developers could build decentralized applications, these things called dApps, on top of Ethereum. Think of it like building a website or an app, but instead of hosting it on a company's servers, it lives on the blockchain.
Okay, I'm starting to get the bigger picture here. So that's where we get things like NFTs and Web3.
You got it. Without Ethereum, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. It's the foundation for a lot of the crazy stuff happening in the crypto world right now, like those NFTs you mentioned. Non-fungible tokens. Basically, they're like digital collectibles, but instead of a physical object, you own a unique token on the blockchain that represents that item.
So instead of having a limited edition print of some artwork, you could have an NFT that proves you own the digital version.
Precisely. And just like with physical art, the value of an NFT can go up or down depending on demand, rarity, and a whole bunch of other factors.
But what's stopping someone from, just taking a screenshot or copying the digital file? If it's just ones and zeros, where's the real ownership?
See, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one of the biggest debates surrounding NFTs. The people who believe in them, they'll tell you that owning the NFT is like owning the original, even if copies exist. Think of it like having a limited edition print of a photograph versus just having like a poster you printed out at home.
Right. It's about the prestige, the bragging rights, being part of that exclusive club.
Exactly. And in some cases, it's also about the potential investment value. Remember those Bored Ape Yacht Club NFTs? People were shelling out hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars for those things.
Yeah, those things were everywhere. Celebrities, athletes, everyone seemed to be buying these pixelated apes. I have to admit, I didn't quite get it. Is it just about having the image, or is there more to it?
It goes deeper than just the image. Owning a Bored Ape NFT was like a ticket to an exclusive online community with access to parties, events, and all sorts of perks. It was about status, belonging, and potentially profiting from the resale value.
So it's about the community, the experience, the potential for profit. It's a whole different ballgame from just earning a JPEG.
A whole different ballgame indeed. But let's not get too distracted by the apes just yet. We've still got a lot to unpack here.
Okay, fair enough. Let's rewind a bit and go back to the technology behind it all, the blockchain. The document we've been given brings up some concerns about Bitcoin and its environmental impact, specifically something called proof of work.
Right, proof of work. That's how new Bitcoin transactions are verified and added to the blockchain. It's a process that requires a lot of computing power and therefore energy.
So the more people use Bitcoin, the more energy it consumes.
Exactly. And with Bitcoin mining operations popping up all over the world, the energy consumption has skyrocketed in recent years, which has raised some serious concerns about its sustainability.
So it's like a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you have this decentralized system that's supposed to be more democratic and accessible. But on the other hand, it's potentially contributing to environmental problems.
It's a trade-off, and it's a debate that's still raging within the crypto community. Some people argue that Bitcoin is moving towards more sustainable practices, while others say it's a fundamental flaw in the system.
It's a lot to consider, for sure. Okay, so we've covered the basics of Bitcoin, Ethereum, NFTs. But we still haven't really addressed the elephant in the room. This document calls cryptocurrency the world's greatest scam. I mean, that's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah, they didn't mince words, did they? And, it's not entirely unwarranted. The crypto market is incredibly volatile. It's driven by speculation, hype, and yeah, there have been a lot of scams and rug pulls.
Rug pulls. Okay, now I'm really lost.
A rug pull is when the creators of a cryptocurrency, especially those new ones, they hype up their project, get a bunch of people to invest, and then poof, they vanish with all the money. It's basically a modern-day bank robbery, but instead of masks and guns, they use code and deception.
Wow, that's scary. And I'm guessing those early investors, they just lose everything.
Unfortunately, that's often the case. And it's not just rug pulls. There's also market manipulation, hacks, and all sorts of shady stuff going on. It's the Wild West out there.
The Wild West with a lot of really complicated code. So how does someone navigate this space without getting, completely fleeced?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
This document briefly mentions something called initial coin offerings, or ICOs, that seem to be a breeding ground for these shady projects.
Oh, yeah, the ICO craze back in 2017, 2018. It was like the dot-com bubble all over again. Everyone and their grandma were launching these ICOs, promising the moon and the stars.
And I'm guessing most of them didn't deliver?
Let's just say a lot of people got burned. It was a free-for-all with very little regulation or oversight.
And to make matters worse, you had celebrities jumping on the bandwagon, promoting these coins and tokens to their millions of followers.
Oh, yeah, that didn't help. I mean, on the one hand, celebrity endorsements can bring in new investors and raise awareness. But on the other hand, it can also legitimize projects that might not be, shall we say, entirely above board.
Right, because if someone famous is endorsing it, it must be legit, right?
It's a slippery slope. And it highlights the importance of, doing your own research and not just blindly following the hype.
So, where do we go from here? It's clear there's a lot of potential in the world of cryptocurrency, but it's also a minefield of risks. How do we separate the revolutionary from the ridiculous?
That's the question we all need to be asking ourselves. It's about being, a discerning investor, I guess. You can't just jump in head first. You got to look before you leap, right?
Easier said than done when you've got all this hype and FOMO swirling around. I mean, you see headlines about teenagers making millions off Dogecoin or some other meme coin. It's hard not to get swept up in the frenzy.
Oh, I know. The fear of missing out is real. But you got to remember, for every success story, there are probably 100 more that we don't hear about, people who lost their savings chasing those quick riches.
And this document, it's pretty brutal. It even compares Bitcoin to a Ponzi scheme. Is that a fair comparison?
Well, it is true that Bitcoin, like all cryptocurrencies, relies on, let's call it a steady stream of new investors to keep the price going up. Early adopters, they only make money if new people keep buying in.
So if people stop buying Bitcoin, the whole thing crashes down.
It's not quite that simple, but yeah, that's the general idea. If that demand dries up, the price could plummet, leaving a lot of people holding the bag.
Okay, so it's a gamble, a high-stakes one at that. But what about this whole decentralized finance thing, DeFi? It sounds even more complicated and risky.
Oh, DeFi, yeah. It's basically trying to replace traditional financial systems like banks and lending institutions with, you guessed it, blockchain technology.
So like getting loans and earning interest, but without the middleman.
Exactly. But of course, it's not without its risks. I mean, the biggest one being the lack of regulation.
Right, because who needs those pesky regulations, right?
Well, regulations can be a pain, but they also protect people. With DeFi, there's no safety net. If something goes wrong, your money's gone. And because it's all built on code, it can be really complicated to understand. One wrong click and poof, there goes your life savings.
Okay, yeah, that's a bit more risk than I'm comfortable with. It seems like you need a degree in computer science just to navigate this stuff.
Well, there is a learning curve, that's for sure. And that's part of the problem. Cryptocurrency is often talked about as this way to democratize finance, but in reality, it can be pretty inaccessible to the average person.
It's like you need a certain level of technical knowledge, a high-risk tolerance, and a good chunk of money just to get started. Not exactly what I'd call accessible.
Right. There's definitely a bit of a paradox there. But, despite all the risks and challenges, there's still something intriguing about this technology, about the potential for disruption.
Okay, so we've talked about Bitcoin, Ethereum, NFTs, DeFi. What about Web3? It's like the buzzword of the century. Everyone's talking about it, but what exactly is it?
It's funny, Web3 is often described as the future of the internet, but it's also kind of this nebulous concept. In a nutshell, it's the idea of a more decentralized internet, where users have more control over their data and online experiences.
So instead of companies like Google and Facebook owning all our data, it would be more distributed, more democratic.
That's the idea, at least. But whether that vision actually becomes reality, well, that's another question entirely.
What do you mean?
Well, for starters, building a truly decentralized internet, it's a massive undertaking. It requires a complete overhaul of the existing infrastructure, and there are a lot of technical challenges to overcome.
And then there's the human element. Can you really get billions of people to agree on something as complex as a decentralized internet?
Exactly. It's not just about the technology. It's about changing behaviors, incentives, and power structures.
Speaking of power structures, this document raises some concerns about the role of venture capitalists in Web3. It paints them as the potential bad guys, more interested in profits than in decentralization.
Yeah, that's a valid concern. I mean, we've already seen how venture capital can influence the direction of an industry. And with Web3 still being in its early stages, there's a risk that it could become just as centralized and controlled as the current internet, just with different players calling the shots.
So it's like we're trying to escape one system of control only to potentially end up in another one. It's like that old saying, meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
It's a risk we need to be aware of. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about the technology. It's about who benefits from it, who controls it, and what kind of world we're creating with it.
It's about making sure that this new internet, this Web3, is actually something that empowers users, not just a new playground for the rich and powerful to increase their wealth and influence.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have these conversations, to question the hype, to demand transparency, and to be critical thinkers.
Because, let's face it, the potential is there, but so are the pitfalls. So how do we avoid falling into those traps? How do we separate the legitimate projects from the hype and scams?
Well, for one, you got to be willing to do your research.
Research, research, research. Got it. But it's easy to get lost in the weeds with all the technical jargon and the sheer volume of information out there. It feels like there's a new cryptocurrency or blockchain project popping up every day.
It's true. It can feel like drinking from a fire hose sometimes. But that's all the more reason to take a step back, Look for those red flags. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Right, gotta watch out for those promises of overnight riches. But besides all the hype and speculation, are there any real-world applications of this technology that have you, cautiously optimistic?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the most promising areas is supply chain management. Imagine being able to track a product's journey from the factory floor to your doorstep with complete transparency and accountability.
So no more counterfeit goods, no more shady middlemen cutting corners.
Exactly. Blockchain technology makes it possible to create an immutable record of every step in the supply chain, which is huge for industries like food, pharmaceuticals, anything where authenticity and traceability are paramount.
That makes a lot of sense. And it seems like those kinds of applications, they're less about speculation and more about solving real-world problems.
Right. It's about using the technology to create tangible benefits, to make systems more efficient, more transparent, more trustworthy.
So it's not all doom and gloom. There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly. I mean, like any powerful technology, it all comes down to how we choose to use it. We can either get swept up in the hype and repeat the mistakes of the past, or we can approach it with a critical eye and try to harness its potential for good.
So what have we learned today? Besides the fact that this is all way more complicated than it seems.
Honestly, the most important thing is to be careful. Do your research, don't get swept up in the hype, and never ever invest more than you can afford to lose.
Solid advice. This has been a wild ride. Huge thanks to you for joining us and for, making sense of all this. And to everyone listening, keep those deep dive requests coming. We'll be back next time with another topic, and who knows, maybe we'll even figure out what we're talking about. Just kidding. Until then, stay curious.
And that's a wrap for this episode of The Deep Dive. I hope you enjoyed today's exploration into today's mystery and that it gave you some valuable insights to think about. If you found this episode helpful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated on all our future deep dives. As always, thanks for diving deep with us today. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.